You're trying to clear your hormonal acne in completely the wrong way. Acne doesn't just start on the skin, it starts inside the body. Hormones, food, and inflammation all play a very big role. In this video, I'm breaking down hormonal acne in a simple way that's easy for you to understand, and I'm giving you my 4-step anti-acne blueprint to support your hormonal acne. And you can find more in-depth details in my free acne nutrition course, which I'll put in the description box below. So let's dive in. And we're going to start by talking about what women should really know about hormonal acne. But before we do that, I want to just clear something up. People often say that hormonal acne only happens in women or around your period. But that is not true, because all acne has some kind of hormonal connection or is driven by your hormones. And this is why. Hormones are chemical messengers. They are going to be telling your body what to do, but they're also responding to their environment. And one of the jobs that they have is how much oil your skin is going to make. Having a little bit of oil is good, but when it gets too much, this is when we can start to see the pores get clogged. And when we add those clogged pores with bacteria, this is a perfect combination for acne to appear. And this is why we can start to see acne showing up at certain times throughout our lives. During puberty, when hormones spike, before your period when hormones shift, in pregnancy when hormones change quick, and even in perimenopause when estrogen drops and other hormones like androgens and testosterone can be stronger. And research has shown that women over the age of 20 are more likely to have acne than men because of these hormonal shifts. But let's talk a bit more about the science, because there's actually 4 main reasons why acne can happen in the skin. The first one is too much oil. This is when your oils are making more sebum than your skin needs. The second is inflammation. This is your body's alarm system, which is making those pimples red and swollen. And number 3 is bacteria, because bacteria are going to love to live inside those clogged pores where it's nice and warm. And number 4 is sticky skin cells and poor skin cell turnover, because extra keratin can actually clog your pores as well. And when all 4 of these things team up together, this is when acne can show up. So what we need to be thinking about is, why are all 4 of these things out of balance? Which one is the biggest concern for you? And what can we actually do about that? Because there's so much we can do with nutrition that I'm going to be going through in this video. But before we do that, I want to talk about how hormones can impact the skin oil production. And the truth is, hormones called androgens like testosterone can be the big drivers here. They are telling your oil glands to produce more sebum, which is the oily stuff on your skin. But sebum itself is not bad. It's when there's too much sebum and it's mixing with those dead skin cells as well as the bacteria to clog the pores and create those breakouts. Oil glands can also produce little chemical messengers called cytokines, which make the inflammation worse. This is why hormonal shifts like puberty, periods, and even PCOS can make acne worse. Let's now think about how food is going to play a role in your acne. And for years, people were saying that your diet had nothing to do with break. And even for me, I remember going to the doctors as a teenager, feeling like whenever I ate junk food like sugary chocolate bars and even crisps, I was feeling that my skin was getting worse. Only for him to turn around, print out a really old, outdated study which mentioned that your diet has nothing to do with your breakouts. And I went about my day feeling like, okay, I guess I can still eat these foods, even though I had this gut feeling that it was making my acne worse. But now new science has proven that food actually impacts your inflammation and your hormones. And a big player here is insulin. When we eat carbohydrates or sugar, our blood sugar rises. To bring this down, your body produces insulin, and that is completely normal. But too much insulin is where the trouble begins, because high is going to boost androgens, which is the oil producing hormone. It can increase IGF-1, which is a hormone similar to insulin, and it can turn on inflammation in the skin. IGF-1 not only pushes out more oil in the skin, it also makes pimples more red and swollen. So a diet high in sugary processed foods means more insulin, more IGF-1, more oil, and more breakouts. So let's now go through those inflammatory triggers, because I want to talk about the specific foods that can actually drive acne. But I want you to know that not all of these foods are going to be the exact triggers for every single person, but they are some of the more known common triggers when it comes to acne. And the first one is high sugary foods, which are higher on the glycemic index. Sweets, fizzy drinks, crackers, baked goods, white bread, fries, sugary cereals, these will all spike your blood sugar fast. And again, leading to more insulin, more IGF-1, and more oil being produced in the skin. And that's why research shows that these foods are strongly connected with acne. Number 2 is chocolate. But pure cocoa or cacao isn't the problem here. The issue is milk chocolate, where the sugar and the dairy have been paired together, because both of these can increase IGF-1 and increase breakouts. Number 3 is omega-6 oil. Oils like soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil. are in lots of processed foods and fried foods. And these oils are going to be raising inflammation, especially if you're not eating enough omega-3s. And you can find the omega-3s in foods like oily fish and even flax seeds and walnuts. And I've mentioned this before, but we want to make sure that there is a healthy balance between omega-6 to omega-3. We want to have a ratio of 1 omega-3 to 4 omega-6, but in more of the Western diet, we can have upwards of 1 to even 40 when it comes to omega-3 to omega-6. So it's really, really important that we are balancing this ratio to reduce the inflammation. Too much of the omega-6 is going to lead to more breakouts and more redness and more swollen skin. And number 4 is ultra processed foods. This is going to be fast foods, chips, crisps, sweets, packaged snacks. It's this combination of sugar, refined oils and dairy together. And that's going to be a triple hit for acne breakouts. And studies have shown that people eating more traditional diets with more whole foods didn't typically show more signs of breakouts. It was when they started to eat more of a Western diet that the breakouts became more prominent. And number 5 is alcohol. Alcohol can raise both estrogen and testosterone and really mess with your hormone balance. It also contains histamines and often a lot of sugar. Together, these can flare your acne and even impact your period. Not to mention the added pressure that alcohol actually puts on the liver. And number 6 is dairy. So let's go into this in a bit more detail. Because when it comes to dairy, it's more specifically milk. Because milk contains proteins called casein and whey. And these increase IGF-1, which then boosts the oil and the inflammation in the skin. Whereas yogurt and cheese don't seem to have as big of an impact on acne. However, everyone is going to be slightly different. And any dairy can be a trigger. And even whey protein shakes can set off acne. I do find that dairy is one of the most confusing foods when it comes to acne, and it's one of the foods I get asked most commonly about because so many people have tried removing dairy but they find it either really difficult or they don't notice and it makes a big difference in their skin. We want to be removing it for a slightly longer period of time, but it might not necessarily be a trigger for you, so it can be quite confusing. Because some people can break out when they drink milk, but some people will be absolutely fine. So let's understand why that is. The first one is that milk proteins, casein and whey can be a trigger. And milk contains both of these. Again, these can increase the IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor 1. And that's one of the big reasons why dairy has been hypothesized to be a trigger for acne breakouts. But what we do know is that IGF-1 acts like insulin in the body. So when the IGF-1 goes up, so do androgens. It tells the skin to make more oil and it increases inflammation in the pores. That combination of more oil and inflammation is the perfect setup for acne to happen. And it's the same reason why whey protein shakes can trigger acne in some people. But not all dairy has the same effect. Like I mentioned before, milk versus yogurt and cheese can be slightly different. In the milk, specifically skim milk, is the biggest problem. Whereas foods like Greek yogurt, cheese, and even cottage cheese don't seem to have as big of an impact on acne. And again, it's because the research suggests that the milk proteins increase IGF-1. But the fermented dairy products don't necessarily spike hormones in the same. There's also the fact that milk can potentially trigger more insulin being produced in the body, even though it's not necessarily a high sugary food. And again, more insulin equals more oil in the skin. So this is what the studies actually say. A review of studies of over 70,000 people showed that those who drink milk have a higher risk of having acne. It was skimmed milk which showed to have the strongest link. And this is because of the higher protein to fat ratio. But what we do know is that dairy doesn't affect everyone, and these could be some of the reasons. The first one is that we're all responding differently to hormones in our food. The next one is how genetics play a role in how sensitive your oil glands are. And what I also know from working with clients is that some people can enjoy yogurt and cheese without having any new breakouts, whereas some people can. What I like to do with my clients is, if you're not sure, I would suggest removing dairy for 2 to 4 weeks, all kinds of dairy, and then gradually reintroducing dairy individually. So for example, you would remove dairy for, let's say, 3 weeks, and then on the first day you would try some Greek yogurt. You'd maybe try a portion of that over about 2 to 3 days, and then you would wait a few days just to see if that is a trigger for any breakouts. And you would then do the same thing for other foods such as feta cheese, cottage cheese, because those are typically going to be responding better in the body. Eventually you would make your way to other types of cheeses, and eventually you would test milk as well, and that will then help you to pinpoint if dairy is actually a problem for you. The other thing to also be aware of that I like to look at with my clients is test results, because there's different things that we can see in your test results which will let us know if actually dairy is going to be a problem for you. But what we do know is that dairy doesn't automatically equal acne. If you are wanting a video with more details on dairy where I can dive into the research in more detail, as well as what we would be looking at with the test results, as well as symptoms when it comes to consuming dairy foods, then I can definitely do a full video all about the connection between dairy and acne. Just let me know in the comments below if that's something you'd like to see. Because now I want to go through the anti-acne nutrition blueprint and this 4-step process. And this is also going to be your homework, so make sure you're taking notes and paying attention to this part of the video. This is a 4-step process, and I know I refer to it as an anti-acne diet, but this is more of a lifestyle change. It's not about going on a diet, it's not about being overly restrictive, it's about building a lifestyle with your nutrition that makes you feel like the best version of yourself. I'm really creating this lifestyle from a place of self-love with your goal in mind that you really want to get this glowing skin, but not just that, we're also aiming for healthy energy, healthy digestion, great sleep, and balanced hormones. These are the 4 steps that we need to focus on. Starting with your nutrition basics. In week 1, we need to start by calculating the amount of food that your body needs on a day-to-day basis. This is your average caloric intake, your protein, your carbohydrates, your fats, and your fiber as well. In the nutrition course, which I'll link in the first link below, there is a specific spreadsheet for you to use to be able to calculate this, because you're going to be using your age, your height, your weight, your daily activity level, and that is going to help you calculate what you need on a day-to-day basis. But just to give you averages, you're going to be thinking about around 2,000 calories, around 100 grams to 120 grams of protein, around 200 grams of carbohydrates, around 60 grams of fats, and around 35 grams of fiber. Those are just averages that you can aim towards. The reason I mention this is because so many women with acne are actually not eating enough food. I want you to ask yourself, if you feel like you're hungry, your energy is dipping, and you're feeling sluggish throughout the day, are you someone who is maybe skipping meals because you don't know what to eat to clear your skin? Are you someone who only has 3 meals without any strategic snacks? Because these are all going to be reasons that are then going to be driving the fact that maybe you're not eating enough food during the day. And under eating is going to impact your skin, because we need to get our fuel from food, and food is going to give you the nutrients that your skin needs. Knowing if you're actually eating enough is going to be a really important thing for you, and to do that, I do like to use an app just to test for a couple of days to see if we are hitting those averages or the amount that we know that we need during the day. And I like to use the app Chronometer because it can also give you some micronutrients as well as the macronutrients. But you don't need to obsess over this. If you prefer to not use this and to just calculate the amounts based on cups or grams for a few days, then that is absolutely fine. Or what you can do is you can use this balance plate method, which I teach all of my clients, because what it's showing you is how you're essentially building your meals and your plate with every single meal. And this will be, as a starting point, 1/3 of the plate as protein, 1/3 as vegetables, and 1/3 as complex carbohydrates. You would then add about a thumb-sized portion of your fats. When we're thinking about the basics, we are thinking about, number 1, are we eating enough food during the day? Number 2, how much food do we actually need to be eating? And number 3, knowing how to build that balanced plate so that you know exactly how to build your meal. Week 2 is all about balancing your blood sugar. This is supporting your insulin response and making sure that your food isn't driving excess oil production in the skin. Now, when it comes to blood sugar, there's going to be other areas outside of your nutrition that impact the skin, such as your stress, your sleep, even your minerals, and a few other things. We don't need to focus on any of that right now. The first thing that we need to focus on is getting your nutrition into a really strong place. And you've already got your balance plate method down. And what I like to suggest is using a continuous glucose monitor to actually see if our blood sugar is spiking too high after a meal, crashing too quickly, or if it's dipping at certain points during the day, giving you indications of when we want to strategically place your snacks. And if you want to know more about snacks, I am going to just link the video up here because I have done a very specific video all about snacks. In week 2, the focus is eating within 1 hour of waking, eating 3 balanced meals during the day, having your snacks strategically between lunch and dinner, or breakfast and lunch. And you can even go for a short walk after dinner. And like I mentioned, we can use a continuous glucose monitor, and my favorite brand is the brand Lingo. Hello Lingo. I will link that in the description below. Week 3 is all about eating anti-inflammatory, and I know in this video I mentioned about omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. So what we're going to be focusing on is reducing some of those acne inflammatory triggers, which I mentioned earlier, and focusing on increasing these foods. And obviously we're going to be starting with omega-3 rich foods and oily fish and having that 3 times per week. But these are some other foods that I highly suggest that you increase in your diet every single day to really reduce inflammation. The first one is vegetables. So we're going to be focusing on having 5 to 6 different vegetables every single day. And of those 5, you want to be having 2 cruciferous vegetables, which are foods like radishes, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage. You want to start cooking with more spices, which are either fresh or dried herbs and spices. These are filled with different nutrients. You want to increase your berries and your fruits. I would be aiming for having at least 2 portions, even 3 portions of fruit every single day, with at least one of those being fresh berries, fresh or frozen berries. You want to increase vitamin A rich foods because vitamin A is essential for skin cell turnover and getting that radiant glow. And this can be from plant-based sources and also animal sources, but just remember that the plant food beta carotene needs to be converted converted into the retinol. When we eat the vitamin A from animal foods, then it's easy for the body to actually use that. So plant foods can be things like sweet potato, carrots, peppers, and then animal proteins will be things like organ meats, beef, eggs, and seafood. You also want to make sure you're having complex carbohydrates. Now that we're focusing on reducing simple carbohydrates like white bread and white pasta, we want to be focusing on complex carbohydrates, which are things like potato with the skin on, so no naked potato, sweet potato, butternut squash, quinoa, brown rice, wild rice. These are all really great complex carbohydrates, as well as oats. And as well as the omega-3 fatty acids, we also want to be having healthy fats as well, such as extra virgin olive oil and avocado. And of course, we want to be having protein and eating enough protein. And it's mostly important to get your protein from whole sources. So this can be animal foods such as your meat, your fish, also some of those better quality sources of dairy I mentioned earlier, like the Greek yogurt and the cottage cheese. And we also want to be thinking about getting it from plant food sources as well, such as legumes, lentils, nuts, and seeds. And you can also use a protein powder if that is something that will help you get more protein into your diet. And the brand I like the best is Vivo Life, and I use this every single day. And then in week 4, we are focusing on bringing in more of a balanced approach, because we want this to be a lifestyle. We don't want to feel like we can't enjoy some of our favorite foods now and again. So with this, I like to focus on eating 80-20. So let's say out of 7 days, you're having 3 balanced meals and 1 snack, which roughly would equate to around 5 times per week. You would then have something that's a bit more of a treat, let's say. So for example, maybe one night you would have a pizza, maybe one day you would have a croissant, but we just want to be careful that we're not overdoing it in terms of the 20%. This is more of a balanced lifestyle. It's not a case of restricting during the week and then having a cheat meal where we binge and go overboard. That is not the approach that we want to take with this. We're seeing this more as a lifestyle. And I know what you're thinking now, this feels like a lot of information. So what I've actually done is I've put this full 4-step approach together inside a free course that you can access by clicking the link in the description box. And that is going to be walking you through each step individually and giving you resources such as recipes, meal planner guide, and even that spreadsheet I mentioned earlier to help you calculate how much energy your body actually needs from food. So you can access that below completely for free. And if you like this video and you are working specifically to support your hormonal acne, then I highly suggest that you watch this video next, because in this video I am breaking down all the specific foods that I like for hormonal acne and why I suggest them. So this is going to give you some even more specific foods for you to implement into your month, your week, to help you with your premenstrual breakouts and your hormonal breakouts. So I will see you